Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Breakfast with Gene as we talk about and prepare for Western States this year. Today, I'm very excited to have a wonderful guest, Reid Coolsaet, who also happens to be our Western States sponsored runner from last year. So Reid has a storied history as a Canadian long distance runner with two Olympic trips, and then he dove into the ultra scene and had a great Western States debut last year. So I'm certainly eager to see Gene pick Reid's brain on that. So gentlemen, welcome to Breakfast with Gene.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, good to be back again.
Yes, Gene, we're keeping you busy here. You are going to have no excuses from a knowledge perspective going into this race. But yeah, let's start with. Oh, you want some excuses?
Oh, I'm looking for excuses every day.
Yes, well, I appreciate that as an ultra runner myself. I've got a whole bag full of them. So Reid, let's start with a little bit of background for the viewers who may not know about you, which is an unbelievable concept to me. Everybody should know who you are, especially all Canadians. But you know, where did you come from a running history perspective? I know in the early days you were a skateboarder.
Yeah, I grew up in Hamilton and I loved cross country running, like right off the bat. Grade 6, started running cross country to some success. And then, yeah, in high school, I did a lot of downhill skiing and skateboarding, still ran cross country. And then in university, got a lot more serious with it. And then after university, really wanted to see how far I could push things. So when I made the World Championships in 2005 in the 5K, really went all in at that point to try to get to the Olympics. And then went to the 2012 and 2016 Olympics in the marathon. Tried one more time for the 2020/2021 Olympics. And when I didn't qualify, I basically went right from that marathon in April to a 110K race in August. So that was my transition from roads to ultra. And it had been kind of like on my mind for years. After 2016, I was like, oh, when's a good time to do it? And, you know, I probably should start off with 50K, 50-mile type races, but somehow went right to 110K. And then with less than a year was running Western States. So
Why not?
I kind of jumped in a lot faster than I thought I would.
Well, it's interesting. So you started with the World Championships in the 5K. When did you know you wanted to get into something a little bit longer and start pursuing the marathon distance?
Probably, I think I always knew I'd gravitate to longer distances just because of my lack of speed. So in high school, and
your lack of speed, sub 15-minute 5K, lack of speed, yeah.
Yeah, so like even in high school, we're running, you know, with my cross country team, I could easily keep up on the long runs and the long intervals, but you know, when it came to 400 intervals, I was out the back door, and so I always knew I would like go to longer distances. But then I had a lot more success at the 5K than I ever thought I would, and so it was kind of like really want to see how far I could get there. Missed the Olympics in 2004 by about 6 seconds in the 5K. So which I was actually super happy to even come that close at that point. It was a breakthrough. It wasn't like a disappointment at all.
And what was I mean, that's a standard, right? That's a standard. What was that?
Yeah, so it was, I think it was about 13:25, 13:26 back in 2004, and I ran 13:31. The next year I ran 13:23, and then a couple of years later I ran 13:21. Which was my PB. So I was kind of like just still improving at that 5K distance and really didn't want to like move up quite yet. And then I had a pretty big injury in 2008, slipping on ice and kind of screwed my back up. And when I came back in 2009, the marathon, it was a good time to just move to a new event. And I pretty much took to the marathon right away, made the world champs in 2009. And then subsequently to the 2012 and 2016 Olympics.
Awesome. Awesome history, awesome pedigree. So you had mentioned that ultras, you know, were always just kind of floating around in your head. I mean, presumably from probably what, 2015 onwards or so. But what really kind of galvanized your commitment to jump into the ultra sports world?
Yeah, so I actually became really interested in Western States and JFK back in the early 2000s. I was working at a running store with,
Really?
yeah, this guy Ryan Melcher and Clark Zeeland.
Oh yeah.
So both those guys would go down to to JFK and do really well. Like I think Clark finished second or third one year, and Ryan I think was like top 10 as a 19-year-old and some other top 10 finishes. And they would just talk about JFK and Western States all the time. So that really like kind of sparked my interest in just following those, especially those two races. And then when Rob Krar, who's also from Hamilton, when he ended up doing really well at Western States, you know, I was like once again like really like kind of following his career and seeing some of the races he was doing. And other than that, like yeah, I would say I met Adam Campbell training in Flagstaff in 07 and kind of followed what he was doing. So when when Rob would run Leadville or Adam would run Hard Rock, I would be introduced to these races just from following those two guys. And yeah, in the back of my head I was like, oh, what, like, what could I do if if we were to run like 100 miles or 100K and whatnot. And so I've always just wanted to test myself. And I found out pretty quickly that running downhills was not my strength at all. And it was, it was a lot more challenging than just the distance, right? Like the distance is one thing, but the courses a lot of these races are on is a whole other it's a whole other skill to to develop or not have, or maybe you're lucky and you're great at it.
Maybe we just all run a little bit slower and it's that much easier.
Yeah.
All right. So as you mentioned, you did Western States, or as we mentioned, you did Western States last year. And you brought up the fact that downhills have been, something challenging to work on for you, which, we all have our areas to build competency in, I suppose. But you want to run us through how your Western States experience went last year, highs, lows? I mean, I saw you out there on the course and you had a great race. So
yeah, I think I did some things really well for a first time 100-mile race, and there's other things that didn't go well that I don't know if I could have changed that much. A lot of it was inexperience or bad luck. Like I got a staph infection in May and lost a bunch of training. Like, what are you going to do there? But one thing I think I did really well was getting ready for the heat. So getting in the sauna quite early, doing that anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week. I felt as though, I handled the heat quite well. And also just, I really took my time crossing streams, getting wet, carrying plenty of water on me as well. I like, if I ever did run out of water on course, I wasn't that far away from an aid station. So I think that was key, and that kept me from, at least not having like a complete bonk or crater or meltdown or whatnot. Like I even though the distance, of course, was like proved to just batter my legs, and it got really tough for the last 35K. Like there was never a point where I was, had heat stroke or was throwing up and stuff like that. So there was never a disaster. So that's what I think I did really well, was kind of mitigate some of the problems that can arise with either going out too fast or not having your nutrition dialed in or not being prepared for the heat. The overall experience was just amazing. It's just a really great community out there, and it's a very limited field, so everybody really wants to be there and is excited to be doing the race. So like the vibes at the start line were really, really good. And I think just watching what some of the other pros who've done really well in the race, were doing it at the start was good for me. I think if if other people weren't around, I probably would have just taken off up that, like the first 6K up the ski hill, because it feels so easy. But of course, it's 100 miles. So, I was just looking around, and I found myself beside a couple of guys that had finished second in the race in prior years. And I was just watching them, like they started walking early on. I'm like, okay, these guys know what they're doing. Like walk up this hill,
Yeah.
So yeah, really like pacing yourself. I think I did a fairly good job of that. And then yeah, I mean, training on downhills for me, like where I live is limiting. The highest, mountain around here is 120 meters high. What is it, like 350 feet or something like that. So going up and down is the best I can do. And so I did a lot of that to make some headway. But when you face really long downhills, there is a sort of building of just that eccentric muscle contraction, just beating your legs down. So yeah, I think maybe walking on a treadmill backwards on an incline, if I would have implemented that, maybe could have helped, because you can do that for 20, 30 minutes in a row, to kind of build that leg strength. And it's pretty easy to do anywhere as long as you have a treadmill. Yeah, so I mean, I could probably talk for a long time about 19 hours out on the course, but we'll just leave it at that for right now.
But I mean, you had a great experience. I know the quads, were blowing up by 60 miles certainly, but you gutted it out, and it was pretty amazing to see. But having lived, well, where we live in Calgary, and spent a lot of time in the mountains, there's just, for me, there's been no replacement other than just climb the mountain, run down the mountain, and climb the next one. And it's amazing how fast you can build like that quad toughness, and how fast you can lose it. You get sick, or you take some time off, and you come back a few weeks later, and you go do your normal mountain run, and you come down the other side, your quads are hurting the next couple of days. Yet you build in a little bit of downhill running over the course of a week or so, after you kind of acclimate and your body gets used to it. Certainly within 10 days of adding that to your program, like, you have iron quads. At least that's what I found. So that's always been amazing. And that was a huge learning moving into the mountains. I always thought it's the uphills that are going to get you, right? You've got to be a strong uphill runner. But in the world of ultras, you win these races on the descents. You survive the races on the descent. So that's interesting. But hey,
I would say I lose the races on the descents, but yeah. I was pretty proud of some of my Strava splits throughout the race on the uphills.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it there.
Even like deep in the race, a couple of them weren't bad.
We look forward to great things still, Reid, from your ultra future. But Gene's taking it with a little bit of a different approach, and I want to give him a chance to pepper you with his questions, and converse about maybe some races that you might have had some crossover on in the past.
Well, first I want to return to his Olympic career. I've got a question he's probably never heard before. So I have quite a few national records, a few world records, but they're all because I'm a real old guy. And I consider all of those records soft for this reason, that at some point, somebody's going to come along who would have been an Olympic caliber runner in his youth, but didn't discover running until he was 60 years old. And because I certainly had no Olympic bones in my body. I mean, I couldn't beat my teammates, and got lapped in a lot of any reasonably long race. So what do you think of that? Do you think there's somebody out there who could have been as good as you, who just never discovered running, or is it impossible for somebody to overlook running as something to do?
Yeah, I think for sure there would be. I think it would probably come from some place where they don't have the same opportunities as we do. I just think there's probably places in Kenya and in Somalia where they don't have the luxury of having some free time to do a few races and see where they are. I mean, certainly not in the Rift Valley area. I think people find out pretty quickly if they're good runners there. Yeah, or if it is like a kind of like a North American thing, there might be a really good soccer player who could have been a really good runner. There might be a really good gymnast or tennis player, something like that, and they just were more interested in that sport. But for my ego, I like to think everyone was on the line.
Best of the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a body can only stand so much, and I've observed that the winners of all the marathons way back when, all the big marathons who are now my age, they can't run worth a ding dong. And
yeah. I think there is like a kind of like a life of a runner at their highest level. I coached this guy, Brian Murphy, when he's 61. At 60, he ran 2:44 for the marathon, and he hadn't run earlier in his 20s or 30s, and I think that's why he can run 2:43, 2:44 at the age of 60.
Okay. Anything
For you, Gene?
Let's see. So there's a lot of information out there on the Western States course, and they'll tell you this and that. But despite all that, was there anything that surprised you about the race? Like, why didn't anybody tell me about this?
Yeah, so I did pick a couple people's brains pretty well on the course and try to do a lot of research myself. But yeah, some of those canyons, they're quite steep and quite long. I should have them memorized right now, like Devil's Canyon and all these names. I had them last year, but I think over the course of 19 hours they got erased in my brain. But those canyons early in the race, like for sure in the first half, they're quite steep and deep. And you do notice when you go down, like as you're going down, you're like, well, now I got to come out of this. So coming out of them was never a surprise, but going down, I kept on thinking, oh, this has got to be the last switchback. This has got to be the last switchback. And then it just kept on going and going and going. So that was probably the biggest surprise. I think I was really ready for the heat. And then so it depends who you talk to. Like some of these ultra runners who are just really good at technical trails will say, oh yeah, like, it's super runnable course, blah, blah, blah. But at least when it got dark and I had my headlamp on, like I found some of that terrain quite challenging in the dark, especially when your legs are super tired. You're a little, you're just worried that with such fatigued legs, if you step on like a rock and it's a bit crooked, you're not going to have the reflexes and strength to just kind of rebound like you might 15 hours earlier. So I did find that although it's quote unquote runnable towards the end, for me it was still quite challenging, the terrain.
No, I certainly remember the last few tens of K in my first 100-miler and second, maybe in the third. It's you have to have the right mindset.
Reid, you mentioned a little bit about how the aid stations and overall Western States went fairly smooth in terms of eating and drinking. I remember you used the arm sleeves as well. In terms of dressing for the heat, anything you do differently? Any like major successes from what you wore last year?
Well, so I kept on filling up. I wore a pack like a with the water bottles here, and I kept on just getting the back of it filled with ice through the aid stations, which I really liked. And of course, it's a bit heavier, but I also found when it was really hot, the jiggling of like the ice cubes on my back, like it kind of gave me a somewhat like sense of relief knowing that I had ice on my back. And it did keep me cool. Yeah, like I wore a white hat with a white like like cape, I guess, or neck protector to keep the sun off. I did really enjoy that. And then the white arm sleeves, when I wet those, I think they feel cooler than not having it on. And then of course being in the sun all day, like I did reapply a bit of sunscreen to my face. But other than that, most of my body was fairly covered. And well, yeah, when like I said, like I would dunk in so many of the streams along the way. And it sounds like from the amount of snow that's up there right now, that the streams will be flowing come race day. So I was using those streams and, like having just wet clothes. And you're in Philly, right, Gene?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like the heat's so different there. Like when I'm used to heat, like pouring a cup of water on my head in Ontario summer heat, like it doesn't give me that much relief. But out there where it's dry, anytime I wet myself, it really made a difference. It's like because it's evaporating, right? It's not just sitting there, it's not super humid. So yeah, staying wet and having clothes I thought was really really beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard it said never pass up an opportunity to cool off during a race like that.
Yeah, for sure.
What's the how many ounces of water do you think is the least you can carry during the worst stages?
So
No, you don't use ounces.
yeah, I know.
I do milliliters, Gene.
Well, what's like 16 ounces is like 500 milliliters, is that right? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
18,
12.
something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, like I would always make sure I left an aid station with a liter on me, right? And then as it got hot, I also had a handheld, so I had a liter and a half.
Okay.
So 500 and the one in my hand. And the one in my hand was purely just to keep me cool. And then I would drink those two. And one would always be like a carbohydrate electrolyte solution.
So if you're well hydrated coming out of an aid station, you figure two bottles will get you to the next aid station.
Yeah. And then yeah, like I said, but you want that third one once it gets really hot and you can keep yourself cool. It's
That's an idea.
That third one. And then yeah, I mean, of course, the longer you take between aid stations, the longer you have to like hydrate yourself. But yeah, I don't know, like I even thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to take one of those little filters, and you could probably like in a jam, if you had in your pack, they don't weigh much. You could put that on a bottle and have extra water if you did need it in some of those streams.
All right, decisions to make.
Yeah, and then of course, like like your crew, I loaded my crew up with a whole bunch of extra stuff that a lot of it I didn't need, but if I did, the opportunity to grab an extra water bottle or change of socks, change of shoes, like all that stuff was there.
Well, in between your father-in-law and Adam, every aid station or crew spot was covered off. How much use did you make of your crew at those locations?
Yeah, like I use them. Yeah, anytime there was a crewed aid station, I used them. It was convenient because they would just kind of yell over at me, and I'd go towards them, and they would have bottles ready, so I could just switch them instead of if you don't have a crew, you're filling up a bottle, like an empty bottle, which isn't really like that big of a deal. But especially early on the race, if I was running with somebody and they had a crew, it would have been kind of crappy just watch them run off because I'm filling up a water bottle. In the second half of the race, I wasn't really running with people as much, and I had my own pacers, so it didn't really matter if I spent an extra 2 or 3 minutes at an aid station. But early on, for sure, it was nice. And then the shoes, like at one point, I really wanted to switch my shoes. Like there's just stuff coming in, like just dirt and stuff coming into it. And that was really nice. And, you know, you need a crew to obviously switch that up, and then just have some of the snacks that you might, you might want. I ate a lot of bananas along the way, so like I could just grab those from any station, but you know, certain gel flavors that I wanted, then my crew had those, or like the chews, or even if it was just like a sandwich or stuff like that. But I surprisingly, I think a lot of people do this, like, you know, you're never supposed to like try something new on race day, but you know, there I was drinking hot soup like at the second last aid station, and like the broth went down so well. Like my stomach wasn't great by that point, but like broth went down really well. And then at the last, or maybe I guess that was the third last aid station, the second last aid station, they had quesadillas, and I was just really hungry. I'm like, let's just have a quesadilla. Never thought I'd be eating a quesadilla mid-race, but you know, it was all right.
That's one of the good things about ultras.
Yeah.
You get some great food along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, for sure. Well, Gene, what do you think? Have you learned something new? Help you on the road to the Western States here?
Yeah, gave me some things to think about. Pretty soon I'll be drawing up a course map and list every stretch and what I want from the crew and so on.
Race plan.
We'll work that out. I'll send it to you. You'll send it back.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna send it to Reid, because you should have seen Reid's race plan ahead of time. We went over it at Western States, and it was very detailed with estimated splits and some time goals and the like, and you know, obviously helpful for the crew. But I think, you know, these races are just so long. It's so important to break them into smaller segments that you can actually, they're manageable. You can keep track of. You can hold yourself accountable to them, and you know, you also have to fully accept that this is an ultra race, and at some point the wheels will fall off to some degree for most of us in most of the races that we do. So, you know, best laid plans, as they say, but still, that race plan that Reid had was highly detailed. So maybe we can circle up afterwards and
I'd love to take a look at it.
crack into the vault.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. All I'd have to do is double all of his time estimations, and it'll be spot on for me.
There we go. Reid times 2. Well, guys, I think we're coming to our close here. But Reid, thanks so much for joining us. It's been great to connect with you, and appreciate you sharing your insights and learnings with Gene. It was wonderful to have you as our athlete last year in the race. And wish you the best of luck with your return to running post-injury, and continued success with your growing coaching business. So
great, thanks a lot. Yeah, my pleasure to be here, and good luck, Gene. If you have any questions of mistakes that I learned along the way, feel free to shoot me a message. And like I said, I think like the two most important things that you can prepare, you know, is getting in the sauna and doing lots of hills. Well,
I'm sort of going to be in a sauna this weekend. I'm going on vacation, and vacation will kind of begin and end in Jakarta.
Oh,
and I ran there a few years ago, and I thought I was going to die. It was sunny, it was hot, it was humid. I mean, I've never seen anything as bad as that. So this time I'll go there and try and do it with a purpose.
Yeah, there you go.
Embrace it. Well, thank you, Gene. Appreciate you asking some great questions as usual, and yeah, leading us on our charge to the Western States. We're getting close now. This is exciting. So thank you, gents, and both of you have a great day.
Thank you.